Alan Brazil's tragic problems have been revealed by those closest to him, and the truth might shock you. The talk sport presenter is known for his controversial remarks and shock jock persona. But what if I told you that behind this tough exterior lies a story of incredible resilience and survival? What you're about to discover about Alan Brazil's journey will completely change how you see this polarizing figure forever. Born in Glasgow in 1959, Alan Brazil wasn't always the outspoken radio host we know today. He was a football prodigy, a young talent so exceptional that he joined Celtic Boys Club before making his mark in professional football. His career began at Ipswich Town in 1977, where he quickly established himself as a formidable forward. Over 6 years with the club, he made 210 appearances and scored an impressive 80 goals, becoming a fan favourite and a key player in one of the most successful periods in the club's history. Brazil's talent wasn't limited to domestic football. He was instrumental in Ipswich Town's victorious 1980-81 UEFA Cup campaign, an achievement that showcased his ability on the European stage. His performances earned him the Ipswich Town Player of the Year award in the 1981-82 season, recognition that led to transfers to other high-profile English clubs, including Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United. At Tottenham, he continued his European success, being part of the team that won the UEFA Cup in the 1983-84 season, marking his second major European title. His international career was equally impressive, representing Scotland 13 times and participating in the 1982 World Cup. But just as Brazil's career was reaching its peak, disaster struck. At the age of 27, when most footballers are in their prime, a recurring and debilitating back injury forced him into early retirement. He later described how his spinal discs were completely gone, and despite trying various treatments, including acupuncture, the injury was too severe to overcome. The sudden end of his playing days left him in a precarious position, unemployed with a young family and a mortgage to pay. This wasn't just the end of a career, it was the collapse of his entire identity and financial security. The transition from highly paid professional athlete to a man with no clear career path created a profound crisis. Brazil found himself searching for a new purpose, and his first attempt at building a new life would prove to be another devastating setback. He took over a pub in Ipswich called the Black Adder, a venture that initially seemed logical for a local football hero. The pub was popular with Ipswich fans, but the business ultimately failed after just 18 months, leading to his declaration of bankruptcy. If you're finding this story as compelling as I am, make sure you subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what you think about Brazil's resilience in the face of these early setbacks. His ability to bounce back from career-ending injury and financial ruin is truly remarkable, and there's so much more to this story. Brazil's own account of the pub's failure reveals the complexity of his situation. He blamed his creditors, particularly the brewery Whitbread, describing them as merciless and claiming he was screwed by them. However, he also acknowledged a more personal factor in the failure, admitting that he was never actually there because he had already begun doing television and radio work instead. This professional failure represented a rock-bottom moment, but it also forced him to commit fully to his burgeoning media career, a path he described as happening without any grand plan and just falling into place. His transition into media was gradual and opportunistic. He began on television, serving as a sports analyst for breakfast show GMTV and as a co-commentator on Sky Sports. He became a regular pundit on Soccer Saturday, where his charismatic and opinionated personality began to shine. In the late 1990s, he joined Talk Radio UK to host a sports programme, and when the station rebranded as TalkSport in 2000, Brazil was installed as co-presenter of the flagship weekday morning show, which has since been renamed the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast. His broadcasting style wasn't that of a polished, formal host. Instead, he cultivated a relatable persona with strong opinions and in-depth knowledge of the game. This authenticity, combined with what many described as his boozy personality, proved to be a powerful formula that established him as one of the most popular football pundits in the United Kingdom. But this unvarnished approach would also lead to some defining moments in his career. In March 2004, Brazil's reputation for loving horse racing and alcohol came to a dramatic head. After spending 3 days at the Cheltenham Festival, he failed to show up for his morning radio programme, an absence he later attributed to basically sleeping in. This wasn't a minor mistake. He was dismissed from his job at Talk Sport. However, the station's decision was short-lived. A deluge of listener opinion, with literally hundreds of emails demanding his return, forced the station to reconsider. He was reinstated less than 3 weeks later after providing certain legal undertakings, including accepting a £5,000 fine for any future missed programmes. This event was a defining moment that demonstrated the commercial value of Brazil's authentic, flawed character. Rather than being a liability, his antics generated priceless publicity for the station. The fine transformed his unreliability into a contractual clause, formalising his rebellious brand and proving that his genuine personality was more valuable than a perfectly punctual, polished presenter. But behind this public persona of resilience and defiance lay a much darker chapter that Brazil had kept hidden for decades. As a young player at Celtic Boys Club in the early 1970s, he had been sexually abused by the club's manager, Jim Torbet. The abuse occurred when Brazil was just 13 years old, a traumatic experience that remained a painful, unspoken part of his life for over 2 decades. In 1996, Brazil demonstrated extraordinary courage by serving as a prosecution witness against his abuser. His testimony was instrumental in securing Torbet's conviction for shameless and indecent conduct with 3 juvenile players, resulting in a 2-year prison sentence. Torbet's history of abuse didn't end there. He was later found guilty of further historical sexual abuse charges in 2018 and 2023, receiving additional prison sentences. In a 2004 interview, Brazil spoke with remarkable candour about his ordeal. He described the abuse as happening only once and credited his ability to cope with his age and strength, stating he was strong enough to never go back there again. He reflected on the raw anger the experience left him with, expressing that he would want to kill the guy if it had happened to one of his own children. He also recognised that many other victims had not been as fortunate or strong enough to tell their stories. The fortitude Brazil demonstrated in testifying against his abuser in a public courtroom more than 2 decades after the fact showcases the deep resilience that defines him. This quality, forged in the face of profound personal adversity, is critical to understanding the emotionally unyielding public persona he projects. The experience of surviving and confronting this trauma contributed to his old-school stoicism and his apparent intolerance for what he perceives as emotional weakness in others. Brazil's unapologetic old-school style isn't a manufactured brand, but the public-facing version of a man whose life has been defined by hardship and resilience. The trauma of child abuse, the abrupt end of his football career, and the financial ruin of his business all required a form of psychological armour to overcome. This armour is what listeners hear on the airwaves, a mix of defiant stubbornness, an apparent lack of empathy for what he perceives as weakness, and a consistent rejection of what he sees as overly sensitive social attitudes. The enduring success of the Alan Brazil brand lies in its perceived authenticity. It resonates with a large audience that feels they too are being left behind by a rapidly changing world. For this demographic, he provides a voice for those who want to hear unvarnished opinions on sports and social issues, creating a sense of solidarity and loyalty. His journey from prodigy to pundit isn't a clean, linear success story, but a series of turbulent pivots, each setback forging the resilient, emotionally guarded personality that is now his primary professional asset. Brazil's media career continued to evolve, with his authentic approach sometimes clashing with changing social attitudes. In 2014, following the death of actor Robin Williams, Brazil made comments that sparked significant controversy. He expressed little sympathy for people who die by suicide, stating that what Williams left behind was diabolical, when his co-presenter Brian Moore attempted to provide a more compassionate perspective about depression. Brazil maintained his old-school viewpoint, admitting he didn't understand the illness of depression. The backlash was immediate, with many listeners calling for his dismissal, and TalkSport issued a swift apology, stating his comments didn't reflect the station's views. This incident revealed how Brazil's life philosophy, built on self-reliance and emotional toughness, sometimes put him at odds with evolving conversations about mental health. His statement that he didn't understand depression can be traced back to his own reliance on resilience to overcome trauma, which perhaps made him less tolerant of what he perceived as a lack of similar fortitude in others. More recently, Brazil's traditional views were highlighted during an on-air exchange about Manchester United's women's team. When his co-host Shaban Aherna brought up the club's plans to boost its women's team, Brazil dismissed the topic, stating that people around the world weren't bothered about the women's team. Aherna quickly pushed back, labelling him a proper dinosaur and reminding him that his own granddaughter plays football. The exchange went viral, garnering millions of views online, but rather than apologising, TalkSport stood by both presenters and allowed the debate to continue. These incidents demonstrate how Brazil's uncompromising personality, forged through decades of personal struggle, continues to generate both loyalty and controversy. His willingness to express unpopular opinions, even when they clash with modern sensibilities, reinforces his brand as someone who refuses to be silenced or changed by social pressure. Alan Brazil's place in British sports media history is secured not just by his sporting accomplishments, but by his transformation into a cultural phenomenon. His influence stems from his ability to connect with a specific audience, providing them with a familiar, if often controversial, voice. His career demonstrates how a personality forged through turbulent experiences can become a resilient and enduring brand. The title of his autobiography, Only Here for a Visit, A Life Lived to the Full, perfectly captures a life in constant flux, with each chapter marking a new and often unexpected departure from the last. Brazil's story is ultimately a testament to survival, reinvention, and the enduring power of staying true to your origins, no matter how difficult the journey becomes. You're looking at a split screen right now. On one side, David Harvey at his absolute peak, a World Cup hero, the unshakable wall behind one of England's greatest ever teams. On the other side, the words rock bottom flash across the screen. His life after football has been called tragic, sad, forgotten. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about David Harvey. The man who walked away from glory didn't fall into darkness. He found something most elite athletes never discover. He found peace, and the story of how he got there challenges everything we think we know about success. David Harvey was born in Leeds on 7th of February 1948, making him 77 years old today. Before Don Revie ever signed him, Harvey worked in a stylo shoe factory, living the typical working-class life of footballers from that generation. When he joined Leeds United as a professional in February 1965, he entered a world of impossible pressure and relentless competition. For years, he served as the club's reserve goalkeeper, watching from the sidelines during the late 60s and early 70s when Leeds dominated English football. He was on the bench for trophy after trophy, the League Cup and Fairs Cup in 1968, the League Championship in 1969, another Fairs Cup in 1971. He featured 4 times in each of those successful Fairs Cup campaigns, but mostly he waited. His chance came in dramatic fashion in 1972. The first choice keeper, Gary Sprake, had made a crucial error in the 1970 FA Cup final. By the 1971-72 season, when Sprake suffered a knee injury before the FA Cup final against Arsenal, Harvey got his moment. Leeds won that final 1-0. From that day forward, Harvey was no longer the reserve. He was the man between the posts for one of the most demanding teams in world football. As the starting goalkeeper, he became integral to Leeds United's League Championship victory in 1911. His consistency earned him 16 caps for Scotland between 1972 and 1976. But the pinnacle came at the 1974 FIFA World Cup, where he made 3 appearances and was voted goalkeeper of the tournament. On the field, teammates and opponents alike knew him as an unshakable presence who delivered results without demanding the spotlight. He never shouted for attention, he just did the work. But here's what you need to understand about that era. This was the 1970s, a decade before television rights, and the Premier League transformed football into a pathway to generational wealth. Despite being an international elite player and a champion, the financial rewards weren't enough to guarantee a comfortable retirement. Unlike modern superstars who can live off their playing days forever, Harvey would need to work civilian jobs later in life. That economic reality shapes everything that comes next, and it's the reason so many fans look at his later years and see tragedy when they should see something else entirely. Then came the cruelest twist of fate. At the start of the 1974-75 season, Harvey was involved in a devastating car crash. The physical trauma was severe enough to sideline him for the entire remainder of the season, and that season ended with the match that mattered most. The 1975 European Cup final, the crowning ambition of the Don Revie era, the biggest match of Harvey's life. He had to watch it from behind glass, separated from his teammates at their defining moment. Leeds lost. The psychological cost of that absence created a wound that never fully healed. It was a historical footnote of deep personal regret. That car crash wasn't an isolated incident either. Throughout his life, Harvey cheated death 3 times. Later in his career, while playing for the Vancouver Whitecaps, he suffered a second car crash. This one was described as career-bending, reportedly causing a measurable slowing of his reflexes. The cumulative physical trauma, combined with the immense pressure of playing goalkeeper at the highest level, naturally created psychological stress and anxiety. In the 70s, sports psychology didn't exist as we know it today. There was virtually no structured mental health support for professional athletes dealing with trauma and performance degradation. Harvey had to internalize everything. That need for a stress-free psychological environment later in life wasn't weakness, it was survival. After leaving Leeds, Harvey played for several clubs: Vancouver Whitecaps, Partick Thistle, Bradford City under his former teammate Trevor Cherry, Morton, non-league sides like Whitby Town and Harrogate Town. He retired from playing in 1987 at age 37. Despite the quiet conclusion to his playing days, he did receive some recognition, including a testimonial match in 1980 between Leeds United and the Vancouver Whitecaps. But retirement meant facing an immediate necessity. He needed a second career. His first civilian job was managing a public house near York at Stamford Bridge. For many retired footballers, running a pub provides a social hub, a business model that mimics the collective nature of the dressing room. But Harvey made a striking change soon after. He became a postman, working at a sorting office and delivering letters. Now, this is where most people see the story as sad. A World Cup hero delivering mail. But listen to what Harvey himself said about it. The sorting office atmosphere was like a dressing room. Think about what that statement reveals about what truly brings someone joy. After spending your whole life finding meaning in structure, routine, and team spirit, finding that same feeling doesn't make you desperate. It makes you wise. You've reached the moment in the script where you might be reconsidering what success actually means. So here's what I want you to do. Down in the comments, tell me about a time you found happiness in an unexpected place. A simple job that brought you peace. A quiet routine that made you feel whole. And if this story is making you think differently about fame and contentment, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more stories like this one that deserve to be told properly. Harvey's postman role wasn't about money. It was a profound search for institutionalized routine, structured physical activity, and low-pressure camaraderie. The job provided a defined structure and team environment, offering an emotional replacement for what he'd lost when he left elite football. Moving away from pub management, which was highly social and potentially high stress, toward the routine service of postal delivery showed an increasing psychological need for reduced social pressure and greater personal space. The economic context matters here too. While football had been good to him and eventually allowed him to fund a secluded lifestyle, it didn't provide the lifetime financial independence common among contemporary players. The need to work well into his middle years reflected the economic differences between the pre-Premier League and post-Premier League eras. This is what drives the popular misinterpretation of his life as one of financial hardship. But the most definitive counter-argument to any claim of sadness comes in 1994. Harvey relocated with his second wife, June, and their 5 children to the remote island of Sanday in Scotland's Orkney Islands. This was an extreme move toward isolation, deliberately designed to create a completely stress-free life. The property reflected this goal perfectly. A 150-year-old stone cottage situated on 10 acres of farmland where they engaged in self-sufficient living, tending to cattle, pigs, sheep, and poultry. Harvey was candid that his ambition, long suppressed since taking that job in the shoe factory at age 15, was to be a horticulturalist. The Orcadian life provided the means to fulfill that enduring dream. Harvey himself gave the ultimate evaluation of his chosen lifestyle. Although one cannot make a full living from 10 acres, he said, the great advantage was that the life was totally stress-free. That direct statement demolishes any perception of tragedy. The psychological necessity of this move was the final resolution to accumulated stresses from a high-pressure career and repeated personal trauma. The choice to live on Sanday acted as both a geographical and psychological shield, ensuring maximum distance from the professional football world. It demonstrated profound indifference to traditional markers of sporting legacy like media commentary or punditry. While on Orkney, he continued working as a postman, reiterating his established preference for stable, routine employment over the unpredictable and emotionally demanding world of football coaching or media work. Life brings challenges regardless of where you live. On Christmas Eve 2009, Harvey suffered a heart attack, but he successfully recovered, adding yet another chapter to a life defined by resilience. This was the 3rd time he'd cheated death. The profound isolation of Sanday served a vital psychological function for 26 years, but eventually it yielded to the pull of familial connection. In July 2020, Harvey relocated from Orkney to Lochmaben near Dumfries and Galloway. The explicit motivation was the need for greater accessibility to his grandchildren compared to the extreme distance of the Orkney Islands. This decision demonstrated a critical developmental shift. While obscurity and stress reduction defined his middle age, familial relationships and active participation as a grandfather became the highest priority in his later years. Today, at 77, David Harvey maintains the low profile he established decades ago. His life continues to be characterized by purposeful familial connection and successful adaptation to retirement. He remains largely absent from conventional media outlets, confirming a resilient commitment to privacy. The perception of sadness doesn't come from verifiable financial distress or psychological failure. It comes from cultural expectations that a player of his status must maintain a public presence or accumulate modern wealth. His 26-year decision to prioritize self-sufficiency and emotional well-being on Orkney represents successful and resilient transition. The relocation to Lochmaben in 2020, motivated by positive desire to be closer to grandchildren, confirms a trajectory of purposeful adaptation and familial engagement following recovery from a heart attack. David Harvey's legacy is defined by quiet competence. He was a hero who never shouted for attention, making him a prime example of the unsung football legend. While his obscurity generates melancholy among those who note there are no statues, no legacy reels, no Hall of Fame, his enduring memory is one earned through silent dependability rather than calculated self-promotion. The most significant victory of David Harvey's later life was securing the deep contentment and privacy that high-stakes public professionalism inevitably denied him. His story isn't tragic, it's triumphant in ways we rarely recognise. Russell Osman's name might not be as instantly recognisable as some of his contemporaries, but his story is one that deserves to be told. Born in Repton in 1959, Osman built a remarkable career that spanned playing, management, mentorship, and, ultimately, health advocacy. His journey shows us that success isn't always linear, and that setbacks can lead to unexpected opportunities to make a real difference. Osman began his professional journey at Ipswich Town in the early 1970s. Working his way up from the youth system to become a fixture in the senior squad. As a central defender, he wasn't just another physical presence at the back. He was what people called a cultured defender, someone who could read the game strategically and use technical skill to control matches. Under the legendary Sir Bobby Robson, Osman became a key part of a successful Ipswich side during the late 1970s and early 1980s. His performances were good enough to earn him 11 caps for England, a testament to his quality at the highest level. Over his playing career, he racked up more than 550 professional appearances across clubs including Ipswich Town, Southampton, Leicester City and Bristol City. When Osman moved to Southampton, he faced a challenge that many footballers encounter as they age. The manager decided to move him from his natural position at centre-back to left-back, a role that demands different attributes. As Osman himself recalled, after all those years playing centre-half, the manager thought he would make a good left-back. For a player who had built his reputation and earned international caps in a specific position, this shift represented more than just a tactical change. It was a signal that his time at the top level might be coming to an end. Rather than fade away, Osman made a practical decision. He moved to Bristol City, initially on loan and then permanently for £60,000, seeking an environment where he could play in his preferred role and take on more leadership responsibility. This move set the stage for what would become one of the most dramatic chapters of his career. Osman's transition into management at Bristol City was remarkably quick. After joining as a player, he was asked to take temporary charge when the existing manager was dismissed. He then served as player assistant manager before ascending to the permanent managerial position in January 1993. For nearly 2 years, he led the club from the touchline, and in that time, he achieved something truly memorable. In January 1994, Osman's Bristol City travelled to Anfield to face Liverpool in an FA Cup third-round replay. Liverpool were one of the giants of English football, and Anfield was a fortress. But on that night, Bristol City pulled off a stunning 1-0 victory. This wasn't just a cup upset. The result was so significant that it led directly to the end of Graham Souness's time as Liverpool manager. Osman's pre-match team talk was later described as inspirational, and his ability to motivate his players to rise to the occasion showed real leadership. Under his guidance, Bristol City maintained mid-table stability in the league, a solid achievement for a club at that level. However, management is rarely straightforward, and Osman's time at Bristol City revealed the complexities of football leadership. While he delivered results on the pitch, some fans felt disconnected from his style of play or approach. The tension between external success and internal satisfaction is something many managers face, and Osman was no exception. Then, in November 1994, less than a year after his historic victory at Anfield, he was dismissed. The reason given was striking. According to reports, the club's directors wanted European football within 10 years. For a club in Bristol City's position at the time, this was an extremely ambitious target. The board's focus on long-term aspirations seemed to override the value of the stability and memorable moments Osman had provided. The aftermath proved telling. Under his successor, Joe Jordan, the club was relegated, suggesting that Osman's work had been more valuable than the board realised. The dismissal triggered a legal dispute that would have significant consequences for Osman's career. He entered into a contractual conflict with Bristol City that lasted through the mid-1990s. The legal case created an unusual constraint when Peter Shilton left Plymouth Argyle and Osman was asked to take charge for the final weeks of the 1994-95 season. He faced a problem. Taking on the full managerial role with pay could have affected his legal position against Bristol City. So instead, he worked under the title of Advisor of Team Affairs, essentially managing the team without the official designation or formal payment. This protected his legal claim, but prevented him from building the continuous track record necessary for a long-term managerial career. When Plymouth appointed Neil Warnock as their permanent manager that summer, Osman's time there ended. The legal constraints forced Osman back into playing, signing short-term contracts with Brighton and Hove Albion and Cardiff City. His subsequent career in football management consisted mainly of temporary and caretaker roles, including a joint caretaker position at Bristol Rovers in 2004. The legal dispute in the mid-1990s had effectively closed the door on the kind of sustained managerial career he might have built. But Osman didn't simply disappear from football. Instead, he found new ways to contribute. He transitioned into advisory and developmental roles, moving away from the high-pressure environment of frontline management. management. One of his most successful contributions came during his work with the Ipswich Town Academy, where he worked under Paul Jewell. In this mentorship capacity, he played a key role in discovering and developing Tyrone Mings, who went on to become a popular figure at the club before moving to the Premier League. This achievement demonstrated that Osman's eye for talent and leadership skills had simply found a different outlet. The qualities that made him a good manager worked just as well in a developmental environment and, perhaps with less of the institutional volatility that had characterised his time at Bristol City. Osman also maintained his public profile through media work. He was involved in football punditry, notably with HTV, and continued to leverage his football legacy for commercial partnerships. He's currently represented by a talent agency for various endeavours, including brand partnerships, endorsements, and media appearances. This resilience allowed him to maintain his financial stability and public presence despite the setbacks in his managerial career. The most significant development in Osman's recent life, however, has nothing to do with football tactics or cup upsets. At 66 years old, he has taken on a role that might be his most important contribution yet. Osman has become a prominent advocate for hearing health, speaking openly about his personal struggles with hearing loss and tinnitus. Tinnitus is a condition characterized by ringing, buzzing, or hissing sounds in the ears, and it can significantly impact quality of life, affecting concentration and sleep. Osman admitted that he was initially hesitant to seek help for his condition. This reluctance is common, particularly in fields like professional sports, where physical capability is so highly valued. There's often a stigma around sensory issues, and many people delay treatment because they don't want to appear vulnerable or weakened. After finally seeking help, Osman was fitted with the latest Signia 9 hearing aids and reported positive results. His willingness to discuss this experience publicly led to an important appointment. On November 14, 2024, he was named the very first hearing ambassador for All About Hearing. In this role, he uses his platform to raise awareness about hearing health, emphasize the importance of wearing hearing devices when needed, and, most crucially, challenge the stigma that prevents people from seeking help. His own admission of initial reluctance serves as a powerful message to others who might be delaying treatment. If a tough professional footballer can admit he needed help and benefit from it, so can anyone else. This late career pivot represents more than just a new job. It's a redefinition of legacy. By publicly embracing his health challenges, Osman has shifted the narrative away from the boardroom conflicts and legal constraints of his managerial years towards something more meaningful and accessible. He's turned a personal struggle into a public resource, using his fame to normalise the experience of hearing loss and the use of modern hearing devices. This demonstrates that public figures can find purpose and positive impact even after facing professional setbacks. Russell Osman's story is ultimately one of adaptation and resilience. His career can be traced through several phases, each with its own challenges. The tactical displacement at Southampton that ended his top-flight playing career. The boardroom instability at Bristol City that cut short his managerial success. The legal constraints that prevented him from building a continuous management track record. But at each stage, he found a way forward. He moved into advisory roles and succeeded in talent development. He maintained his public relevance through media work, and now he's using his platform to help others by addressing an important health issue that affects millions. His modern legacy isn't defined by the number of matches he managed, or even by that famous night at Anfield. It's defined by his ability to pivot successfully from one path to another, finding purpose in each new phase. By becoming a health advocate, he's shown that professional setbacks don't have to be the end of the story. They can be the beginning of something different, something that might ultimately be more important than the original plan. Osman's journey from cultured defender to cup giant killer to health champion shows us that careers are rarely straightforward. Success looks different at different stages of life. The qualities that made him valuable on the pitch, tactical intelligence, leadership, resilience, have served him well in every subsequent role. And now, by speaking openly about hearing loss and challenging stigma, he's contributing to society in a way that goes beyond sport. That's a legacy worth celebrating, and a reminder that it's never too late to find a new purpose.
Martin Buchan, Mr. Reliable. When I first started going to United, he would be centre-back, and he played virtually every game, I think, over the 10 years he was at United.
Martin Buchan is 76 years old. When you search for him now, you find a man who seems to have vanished from football entirely, living a quiet life away from the spotlight. The truth about Martin Buchan's life today is not one of sadness or loss. It is about something far more powerful. It is about a man who has lived his entire life with the same values, from his playing days to this very moment. Martin Buchan was born on March 6, 1949, in Aberdeen, Scotland. His football career started at his hometown club, Aberdeen, where he quickly showed the leadership and character that would define him. At just 20 years old, he became captain of the Dons. In 1970, in Mantui, he led Aberdeen to a 3-1 victory over Celtic in the Scottish Cup final, defeating one of the most dominant teams in Scotland at the time. The following year, 1971, Buchan was voted Scottish Player of the Year. That same year, he earned his first cap for Scotland, beginning an international career that would see him represent his country 34 times across 2 World Cups. His performances caught the eye of Manchester United manager Frank O'Farrell. In March 1972, United paid a club record fee of between £120,000 and £125,000 to bring Buchan to Old Trafford. He made his debut on March 4th, 1972, just 2 days before his 23rd birthday, in a First Division match against Tottenham. United desperately needed stability. The club was struggling after the departure of Sir Matt Busby, and the final stages of George Best's time at Old Trafford had created chaos. Buchan was expected to bring calm and authority to the defence. But what should we make of a player who stays loyal when everything falls apart? Comment below and let us know your thoughts. And if you are enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss more content like this. Despite Buchan's quality, Manchester United continued to decline. Just 2 years after his arrival, the unthinkable happened. At the end of the 1973-74 season, Manchester United were relegated to the second division. For a club that had won the European Cup just 6 years earlier, this felt like the end of the world. The relegation was confirmed on April 27, 1974, when results elsewhere sealed their fate. The famous moment of Denis Law scoring a back-heel goal for Manchester City against United in the final home game became part of the story, but the club was already mathematically relegated before that match ended. Buchan found himself at a club in total chaos. There were managerial changes, high-profile drama, and a squad that had lost its way. Many players in his position would have immediately looked for a transfer to protect their careers and international prospects. But Buchan did not do that. He made a conscious decision to stay. Instead of complaining or feeling sorry for himself, he simply rolled his sleeves up and got to work. His goal was clear: get Manchester United back to the First Division where they belonged. His calm, disciplined approach in the middle of the storm was exactly what the club needed. He was compared to Franz Beckenbauer for his ability to bring the ball out of defence, and to Bobby Moore for his ability to read the game. His actions spoke louder than any words. This quiet commitment made him the natural choice to lead the rebuilding effort. Under manager Tommy Docherty, with Buchan anchoring the defence, Manchester United won the Second Division Championship in the 1974-75 season. They bounced back to the top flight at the first attempt. In 1975, following the departure of Willie Morgan, Buchan officially became the permanent club captain. He would hold that role for 6 years. During that time, he set the highest standards and was consistently the first name on the team sheet. The peak of his captaincy came in 1977. Buchan led Manchester United to a 2-1 victory over Liverpool in the FA Cup final. His defensive performance that day was outstanding. He successfully neutralised the threat of Kevin Keegan, one of the best players in Europe at the time. This achievement made history. Buchan became the first man to captain a side to major cup triumphs, both north of the border with Aberdeen and south of the border with Manchester United. His place in football history was secure. Buchan maintained his high level of performance through the late 1970s. He was an ever-present figure in the 1979-80 league campaign, but by the early 1980s, injuries began to catch up with him. The arrival of new manager Ron Atkinson in 1982 coincided coincided with the physical toll of years of top-level football. In the 1981-82 season, Buchan still played 36 times across all competitions, but by his final season at Old Trafford, 1982-83, he had become a bit-part player, making only 6 appearances, with just 3 of those in the league. Despite serving the club for over a decade and leading them through their darkest period, Buchan did not feature in the successful, replayed 1983 FA Cup final victory over Brighton. It was an unfortunate end to a remarkable chapter. His Manchester United career ended abruptly in August 1983. Persistent injuries, particularly problems with his thigh, had finally forced him to step away. After years of remarkable consistency, his body could no longer keep up. The club granted him a testimonial match against Aberdeen in August 1983 as a fitting send-off. He joined Oldham Athletic on a free transfer that same month, hoping to continue playing, but the thigh injury would not heal. After making 28 appearances for Oldham, he was limited to just 4 games in the 1984-85 season. In October 1984, Buchan announced his full retirement from playing football. Seeking to stay in the game, he tried management. In June 1985, Buchan was appointed manager of Burnley, a club that had just been relegated to the 4th division for the first time in their history. But management was not for him. He lasted less than 4 months, resigning on October 10, 1985. He quickly realised it was not a job he was suited for. The high-stress environment of tactical decision-making and dealing with volatile situations did not align with his strengths. After briefly working as an area manager for a sportswear company, Buchan found his true calling. He joined the Professional Footballers Association in Manchester. This role would last 17 years. His background as a disciplined captain who set the highest standards made him perfect for player welfare work. As a PFA executive, Buchan became a familiar face and respected figure. His responsibilities included providing direct advice to players on sensitive matters, like contract disputes and disciplinary issues. He called his time at the Union a thoroughly enjoyable experience and said he learned how much the organisation did for the game. He observed the changing nature of football, noting the vast influx of foreign players, which he viewed positively, mentioning figures like Eric Cantona and Gianfranco Zola. But his old-school values remained. He expressed concern over the number of cheap bookings in the modern game, contrasting it with his own record of just 5 bookings and 0 send-offs in 18 years as a player. In June 2017, at the age of 68, Martin Buchan retired from the PFA. But this was not a retirement driven by a desire for leisure, it was driven by duty. Buchan stepped down to become the full-time caregiver for his wife, who had been diagnosed with advanced dementia. This decision to leave an enjoyable and respected career to fulfill a personal obligation was the ultimate expression of his character. Just as he had committed himself to the challenge of returning Manchester United to the top flight in 1974, he now stepped away from football entirely when his family needed him most. The welfare of his wife was a non-negotiable priority. In a 2020 interview, Buchan provided an update. He explained that his wife had eventually reached a stage where she required professional care beyond what he could personally provide. She was moved to a nursing home. This long period of dedicated care had occupied his life for several years. The care journey was difficult, as it is for millions of families facing dementia. Buchan handled it with the same quiet strength he showed throughout his career. He did not seek attention or sympathy. He simply did what needed to be done because it was the right thing to do. His life had come full circle in a way, from being the anchor for a struggling football club to being the anchor for his own family in their time of greatest need. At 76 years old today, Martin Buchan remains retired and lives in the Manchester area. He maintains a very low public profile. His priority remains his family. His involvement with football is now limited to watching Manchester United games on television whenever possible. He has noted that his public appearances at Old Trafford have been extremely rare in recent years due to his personal priorities. He maintains a nostalgic view of the modern game, expressing warmth for the proper football fans of the 1970s and valuing the privacy players had in his era, something he would not trade for the scrutiny modern footballers face. The pace of modern football, both on and off the pitch, is very different from the game he knew. Martin Buchan's life is not a tragedy. It is a story of integrity. From his early days as a Scottish Cup-winning captain, to his time at Old Trafford, where he provided stability during a crisis, to his 17 years protecting the interests of fellow professionals, and finally to his decision to care for his wife, every chapter has been defined by the same values: duty, commitment, quiet dignity, the same sense of responsibility that made him stay at Manchester United after relegation is the same sense of responsibility that guides his life today. He is not forgotten. He is simply focused on what matters most to him. His legacy is not just as a great footballer, but as a man of exceptional character who understood that true leadership means being there when others need you most, whether on the pitch or at home. That is where Martin Buchan is now, and that is exactly where he wants to be.
Before he's made contact with Berthold, he knows exactly what's happened.
Years ago, when Koichi was manager.
He used to tell me how much of a bad father my dad was.
What really happened to Paul Gascoigne? The man once hailed as England's most naturally talented footballer now fights battles far removed from the pitch. In July 2025, Gazza collapsed at his home in Poole. He was found barely conscious in his bedroom and rushed to intensive care. This was just the latest grim chapter in a story that has been unfolding in public for decades. How did a player who captured the nation's heart end up here? How did the hero of Italia 90 become a man living in his agent's spare room? The answer lies in a tale of self-destruction, poor choices, and demons that have consumed him from within. Think back to 1990. Paul Gascoigne was the most naturally talented English footballer of his generation. At the World Cup in Italy, he was brilliant. His performances drove England to the semi-finals. But it was the moment he broke down in tears after receiving a yellow card that made him immortal. The cameras captured his face crumpling on the pitch. That raw emotion was broadcast around the world. He returned home to Gazamania, a media frenzy that would never truly end. The nation fell in love with him. They loved his skill, his passion, and his authenticity. He was our flawed genius, a working-class boy from Gateshead who played football like it was art. But the cracks were already there. They had been there since childhood. Before we uncover the dark truths that led to his tragic downfall, if you think Gazza's story is a crucial lesson for modern football, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments what you think was the single biggest cause of his ruin. The pain started early. At 10 years old, Gascoigne witnessed the death of a friend's younger brother in a traffic accident. The trauma scarred him deeply. It gave him obsessions, twitches, and an anxiety that would haunt him forever. Football became his only escape. As he later wrote, it was the only place where he did not have twitches or worry about death. This created a dangerous pattern. His brilliance on the pitch was always tied to his turmoil off it. When football ended, so did his escape route. The disease of alcoholism has been his most visible battle. During his playing days, he was what he called a happy drunk. He drank socially. He was the life of the party. But that version of Gazza is long gone. In March 2024, he admitted he is now a sad drunk. He does not go out anymore. He drinks alone indoors. This shift from social drinking to solitary drinking marks a dangerous evolution of his addiction. It shows a man who no longer seeks connection, but instead seeks oblivion. His battle with alcohol is a brutal cycle. He has managed periods of sobriety. He has done 5 years sober. He has done 4 years sober. Even before his July 2025 collapse, he had been sober for 3 months while working on speaking engagements. During that time, friends said he looked really well, but then he crashed again. This pattern reveals a troubling truth. His recovery is not just a private battle. It is a public performance. The structure of work keeps him stable temporarily. When the work ends, the crash often follows. The pressure of performing wellness may itself be unsustainable. He knows he is an alcoholic. He has returned to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. He admits he is ignorant to himself. He always thinks he will be all right having just one drink. Sometimes he can have a couple and stop, but then, a month later, he will hit it hard for 2 days. The disease tricks him every time. He has tried extreme measures. He spent £20,000 on a procedure to have anti-alcohol pellets sewn into his stomach. The pellets were designed to make him violently ill if he drank. Yet still, the battle continues. Compounding his alcoholism is a constellation of severe mental health conditions. Gascoigne has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder. He has openly battled severe depression and anxiety. These are not separate issues. They create a vicious cycle with his addiction. His OCD has manifested in disturbing ways. There are reports he once forced his stepson to flush a toilet 100 times. This is the severity of his condition. These struggles are rooted in that childhood trauma. The intense pressure of his career and the relentless media scrutiny acted as accelerants on a pre-existing vulnerability. He speaks directly to this connection. He tries not to get down because when he is really down, that is when he picks up a drink to cheer himself up. For Gascoigne, alcohol has always been a failed attempt to self-medicate a pain that began long before he ever kicked a ball professionally. The financial cost of his struggles has been catastrophic. At his peak, Gascoigne amassed a fortune exceeding £20 million. His earnings were colossal. He received a £2 million signing fee when he joined Lazio. He earned £1.25 million a year at the Italian club. He had a £2 million boot deal with Adidas. He earned £30,000 a week at Middlesbrough as late as 1998. Today, those riches have long disappeared. His estimated net worth is now in the region of a mere £75,000. His financial history is littered with crises. He has faced bankruptcy proceedings multiple times. In 2016, he narrowly avoided bankruptcy by paying an outstanding £42,000 tax bill. Most recently, in July 2025, his personal business, Gaza 8 Limited, was compulsorily struck off and dissolved. He had failed to submit his accounts. The company was meant to manage his earnings from media work. Now it is gone. Parallel to his financial collapse has been his torturous relationship with the tabloid press. The 2022 BBC documentary Gaza reframed his story. It cast the media not as passive observers, but as active antagonists in his downfall. During the 1990s circulation wars, Gascoigne became a pawn. He was a source of endless, lucrative content. The documentary detailed the underhand methods used to get stories. There were paid informants within his inner circle. He was a victim of the News International phone hacking scandal. This relentless, often illegal scrutiny fueled his paranoia. One former tabloid reporter admitted in the film that they did not care if he was an alcoholic. The guy ended up diagnosed with extreme paranoia when the reality was he was not paranoid. It was genuinely true. This history makes his current situation all the more complex. The very media entities that once exploited him are now his business partners. His new memoir, 8, is being published by Mirror Books. Mirror Books is an imprint of Reach plc, which owns the Daily Mirror. The Daily Mirror was one of the key tabloids from his most turbulent era. To promote the book, he grants exclusive interviews to these same outlets. He appears on their television programs. This is not forgiveness or hypocrisy. It is a stark reflection of his limited options. To earn a living, he must engage with the machine that contributed to his unravelling. He is caught in a trap. His own narrative of trauma and recovery is both his to tell and a commodity to be packaged and sold by the organisations that once twisted it for their own gain. The turmoil of his life has taken a heavy toll on his personal relationships. His marriage to Cheryl Gascoigne lasted only from 1996 to 1998. It was short and turbulent. The relationship was marred by domestic violence, which he publicly admitted to in a 1994 newspaper interview. The divorce was bitter. Yet their connection remains deeply complex. Years after their split, Cheryl was seen weeping as she left the clinic where he was being treated. It is a powerful image of the enduring, painful bond between them. His relationships with his 3 children have been similarly fraught. His bond with his adopted daughter, Bianca, appears to have strengthened in recent years. She has become a source of public support. In 2017, she said they had become close over the last year. In 2021, she shared a family photo on social media. She wrote that moments like these she would cherish forever. with all the family back together. During his July 2025 health scare, she was reportedly in close contact to stay informed of his condition. He maintains a strong relationship with his biological son, Reagan. When Reagan, a professional dancer, came out as bisexual, Gascoigne's response was one of unconditional love. He told him it did not matter, that he would support him 100%. He said Reagan had to do what made him happy. He added that he was very proud of him. The relationship with his adopted son, Mason, is the most troubled. In the aftermath of the divorce, the acrimony was extreme. Gascoigne claimed to have received a text message from teenage Mason that read, "Go and take some pills, fuck off, and die. You are a loser." For his part, Mason alleged that Gascoigne had been physically abusive. Gascoigne denied this. The dynamic is further complicated by reports that Mason has faced his own significant struggles with addiction. One ex-girlfriend alleged he binged on cocaine, booze, and gambling. This suggests an intergenerational echo of trauma and addictive behaviours. Gascoigne's life serves not only as a source of pain, but also as a tragic cautionary tale for a son seemingly walking a similar path. Despite this difficult history, in a 2020 interview, Gascoigne stated he had a good relationship with them all, specifically including Mason. The current nature of their bond remains unclear. His physical health remains a significant concern. The July 2025 collapse that saw him hospitalised in intensive care underscores the ongoing fragility beneath his periods of apparent wellness. His living situation is a humbling reflection of his financial state. As of early 2024, he confirmed he is living in a spare room at the home of his agent, Katie Davies, in Dorset. For a man who once commanded multi-million-pound transfer fees and owned lavish properties, this reality is a stark indicator of his financial ruin. It shows his deep reliance on his immediate support network for basic stability. Despite his health and personal challenges, Gascoigne remains an active public figure. His primary source of income appears to be an extensive speaking tour. An evening with Paul Gascoigne events are scheduled across the UK throughout 2025, from Portsmouth and Dudley in June to Billingham and Great Yarmouth in the autumn. These events offer fans the chance to hear him speak about his career and his personal trials and tribulations. There are audience question and answer sessions and VIP meet and greet opportunities. This schedule reveals a crucial aspect of his current existence. His life story, with all its glory and trauma, has been packaged into a product. His job is the monetization of his own legend. He survives financially by constantly reliving and recounting his past, both the triumphs and the tragedies, for a paying audience. This creates a psychologically complex situation. The very act of earning a living requires him to remain tethered to the events that have caused him the most pain. Central to his 2025 activities is the promotion of his new memoir, 8. The title is deeply personal. It references not only his iconic shirt number from Euro 96, but also the 8 emotions he says have run riot through my life, sometimes all in the same afternoon. Coming 2 decades after his first autobiography, this book represents a conscious effort to reclaim his own narrative with the benefit of hindsight. He has stated his primary motivation for writing the book was to try and help others who may be facing similar struggles. The promotional material bills the memoir as honest, raw, moving, and ultimately uplifting. It promises to show the world Paul Gascoigne as never before and allow people to get to know the real me. This endeavour is both a genuine attempt at reflection and a necessary commercial enterprise. But here is the paradox. Despite everything, Gascoigne is still loved. The public response to his July 2025 collapse was not judgment. It was an overwhelming outpouring of affection and concern. Fans called him a national treasure and England's greatest. This affection is inextricably linked to his vulnerability. The public narrative of Gazza is a powerful blend of his on-pitch brilliance and his off-pitch tragedy. He is loved not just in spite of his flaws, but in many ways because of them. In an age of polished, media-trained athletes, he represents a flawed, brilliant, and profoundly human figure. At 58, Paul Gascoigne exists in a state of profound contradiction. He can look better than ever in May, only to collapse and require intensive care in July. He is a father who has mended deeply fractured bonds with his children, yet lives in his agent's spare room. He is a victim of exploitative media intrusion, who now depends on that same media machine for his livelihood. His recovery is not just a private battle, but a public performance, which is itself a source of immense pressure. Yet, despite the collapses, despite the ruin, despite the pain, Gascoigne demonstrates a remarkable, heartbreaking resilience. The public still adores him. He still gets up. He still tells his story. He still tries. His life serves as a powerful saga of genius, addiction, and the brutal cost of fame. But it is also a story of survival. The final whistle on his personal struggles has not yet been blown. He is, against all odds, still in the game.